Stefan Hawks here with Guitar Tabs Daily at my very own Hawks studio. Today I'm going to be reviewing the Drunk Beaver Pedals BAT Cold War, which is a RAT style pedal, but with a whole lot of features that no RAT that I ever had on it. So yeah, we're going to be a pretty deep review because there's a lot to go over. Today, I'm going to be playing out of my 1996 Fender American Vintage Reissue 52 Telecaster into my Matchless Independence 35 and my 1968 Greenback 25 cab. So yeah, to start, this thing has all the RAT controls that you expect. It's got the distortion, the filter, and the volume. Those are obviously the only three controls that you need with a RAT pedal. However, I've never looked at a RAT pedal and said, why couldn't I have more options? And this thing definitely answers the question of what would you do if you had more? A lot more. So basically, just to give the kind of overall rundown of options, you have the op amp selection of West and East. West is the traditional LM308, and then East is a different Russian configuration that just gives you kind of a different sound. It's not as bright. It's got kind of more of like a sturdy kind of sound to it. So that's one of the ways in which this is flexible, is got the op amp switch that definitely makes a tonal difference that you can kind of balance against the other options. It also has this fat switch, which has stock. Obviously, isn't going to change your low end. The low turns down your low end, and then if you want it to be fatter, you turn it up to make it fat. So not a lot to figure out there. And then you have all these mode options. So the clipping options are boost, soft MOSFET, soft GE, hard, and hard LED, and hard GE. So yes, obviously it makes more sense to hear them than to talk about what they are. Some of them are more based on, classic clipping options. Classic clipping options like you would find in the, variations of RAT pedals over the years. So, you dirty RATs have a different clipping than classic RATs, which have a, different one than turbo RATs. And then there's some in here that are just kind of their own thing, just to give you another look at a RAT style pedal. So again, versatility here is pretty crazy. This guitar is a single coil guitar, but it really rips and it sounds great with this pedal. So I really like, the sounds I was getting out of it. So to start, here's my clean tones. Now I had kind of started this off on the hard setting, so let's check that out. It's pretty big. So the first thing you notice is that the pedal has no problem getting over, in terms of headroom, over the sound of the clean. I don't even have it all the way up. Some of these settings vary in volume, but none of them are weaker than the clean. So again, that's always a big thing that I kind of harp on with an overdrive pedal. I don't want to be playing clean and have it go rocking and then have it rock less than my clean. It's, the thing of nightmares to me. So definitely not a problem here. And I've actually got the fat on low. So I find a lot of this pedal, it's just a huge sounding pedal. You can tell it would definitely excel, for bass guitar, which is something that they advertise for it. And I believe it because it's got that power and that headroom to it. So I find myself leaving the fat switch on low, actually, and carving out a little bit of body because it still sounds pretty balanced to me. But if you put it to stock, it's not like it doesn't sound good. And if you put it to fat, it's still kind of cool. It just gives it a different texture, which will very likely come in handy when I go to some other modes. So let's go back to the boost mode. One thing to note about this pedal is that the different clipping options definitely change where the volume needs to be set. So this isn't something where you can just set it on one setting and flip between all of them. But that's not realistic given the way that the clipping works. Any pedal that has different clipping modes, you can't regulate the volume on them. It has to do with the chip and everything. So, you do just have to set it up. Some of them are more congruent with one another. Some of them are roughly the same volume, but some of them change. So you just have to pick which ones you like and adjust them as needed. There's still, again, a lot of options within one pedal. So I usually start with a distortion around noon, maybe 1 o'clock on most things. Some of these are lower gain than others. So let me see what I got here. So that one's very loud. So I'll start with the volume down a little bit and bring back the filter to warm it up. And then get the gain up, see what we got. So, I mean, that lets a lot of sound through. It's big. Obviously, you can see the volume didn't need to be as high as the other clipping setting that I was on, but you're able to dial in a sound that's big and robust. Let me compare now with the op amp. So the West is more the traditional RAT sound. I do favor that sound because I'm a RAT guy, but that doesn't mean on some of these settings, and depending on what kind of guitar or cab or amp you're using, that doesn't mean that the East, op amp setting isn't usable. It's very cool. It's just a murkier thing. I'm usually into more like modern tones, but clearly if you're going for something vintage, you can hear immediately it's got its purposes. So here's the West again. And then here it is on East. So again, like I said, it's darker, it's creamier, and it varies depending on how useful it's going to be, depending on the setting, because again, they all have such drastically different sounds. So I'm going to move over to the soft MOSFET and just see what I get on the settings I'm on. So immediately, a little quieter, a little darker. So I'll turn up the volume, turn up the distortion, probably put the op amp back to West to get a little more brightness, because this is definitely a darker setting. It's also got less gain. So again, we got plenty of room on these knobs to go. It's not an issue where you don't have the ability to get there. They just require different settings depending on the setting that you choose. So turn up that gain. So that one's cool. It's not as high gain as the other ones, but it retains kind of the string sound, which again is just a thing in and of itself. Not everything's got to be this blown out distortion, borderline fuzz thing. I mean, it's just got a cool crunch to it, and the guitar character kind of comes through more. So that's cool. Again, I could max the gain out, but it's never going to be as gainy as the other ones. But you could certainly use that with an overdrive. So you can use it as a boost, but on its own, it doesn't do high gain on that setting. And then we'll go to the soft GE. So with this one, you got to have the volume all the way up and the distortion pretty much cranked. And then maybe we put the fat back to the stock because it doesn't have quite as much body as some of the other settings. I could even see going to the fat mode on that. So that's the other thing about this. Some of these modes really work well as kind of a boost because they are pretty transparent. So like the mode I have it in now, it's very true to the character of the guitar, and probably don't need it on fat if I'm going to use it as a boost. In fact, probably go back to the low fat setting. Yeah, so if you take that, I mean, that. So that's not what you think of when you think of a Rat, but again, just some of these settings have the ability to do kind of transparent boosts. So yeah, if I take an overdriven amp and do that with a boost, I'm guessing it'll sound pretty good. So yeah, that's, you know, if you're going to take an already overdriven amp and want to kick it up a notch, that works really well. Now going to this hard SI setting, this is, to me, kind of does the most traditional Rat thing. I really like the way this one sounds. It gets the gain gets pretty explosive and cool. Yeah, this is kind of my favorite kind of, you know, if you're just going for the Rat sound. And every sound on this thing is big. Like every sound on this thing is just bold and like fat and just has like a lot of body. Never has any problem getting louder than the clean. That's one thing for sure on this thing. Like it is never harsh or like overly bright. It sounds just big and fat. Like no matter what setting, I feel like it's pretty hard to make it wimpy. I don't really think I have found that yet. Which is why I was saying I can see this being a real winner for bass guitar, because again, if there's no, you know, if everything's nice, retaining the low end, and I'm even having to cut some, then that means in a bass situation, it's going to let the bass through. And bass also, you're going for a lot of attack. You don't necessarily need to go for high gain with bass all the time. You're going for more of like a grind mid-gain sound with bass. And this has a lot of really good options in that arena. So, all right, then going to the hard LED. I think this one's kind of loud, so I'm going to back the volume off. So this one's cool because I think we're going to get to use the filter and the op amp a bit more. This one's got a lot of clarity, a lot of bite. This little light here, you can see it's just clipping real hard, which gives a really cool sound. It's almost got like a neck pickup sound in the bridge, which is pretty wild. I mean, if you're trying to play that kind of music and you want the clarity of a, you know, of a bridge pickup, but you want kind of that low end of like, I mean, it's doing a really good job of that. And it seems like it has to do with how much gain you give it. If you give it a little less gain, it cleans it up. But when you push the distortion on this channel, it pushes it into just like kind of just fat lead sound. See, that's still clear. You turn up that gain even a little bit, you get the fat low end. So I like that one, you know, backed off a little bit to where it's still clear. But let's put it so it's clear, and then we can hear the East op amp. So you can hear on the brighter settings of the clipping, you can hear where the East op amp comes in handy. Again, still a fan of the West op amp overall. But, you know, people use pedals for lots of different things. And like I said, I skew a little more towards liking modern things. So if you're going for vintage, you know, they could have just called that a modern and a vintage switch and people would have been like, listen to how vintage it sounds. And it does. So it's definitely a good option to have. No reason not to. And then here we are on the hard GE setting, the last setting on the clipping. Again, a little quieter, but that's got that cool, grindy, almost fuzz thing going on. So again, that's not really the sound I associate with a Rat pedal, but that's a sound that a lot of people really like that's really desirable. So yeah, I mean, basically to sum it up, I mean, this thing's got, you know, I'd say it's literally probably about 5-6 pedals in one, varying different degrees of overdrive and clipping on things that I've heard. Definitely some classically Rat sounds in there, but some fuzzes, some boosts, you know, just different kinds of crunch. You know, the tonal flexibility on it's great. You can do lots of different things with it. I don't have any doubt that something in here could be somebody's just go-to sound because you're dealing with a lot of options that all are able to be made to work. So, you know, this is a single coil guitar. Obviously, you get a humbucker, something darker or brighter, you just adjust the settings accordingly. This isn't a particularly bright telly, so that might be why I had the filter up a lot, but it's a pretty round sounding telly. But again, you know, I was cutting a lot of low end out of the thing. You could definitely make it brighter. Sounds great to me. So yeah, the Bat Cold War by Drunk Beaver Pedals. This thing's really cool. It's very powerful. And again, I kind of feel like this is probably also really favorable towards bass players, just based on the number of things it does and the way kind of bass grind works. But it's a great guitar pedal. Never sounds thin, never sounds weak, super powerful, and pretty cool.